Peter Reilson tonight. No, Matt, he is elsewhere, and because we have got a very special guest tonight. So, as we always say, who are you? What do you do?
Oh, hello, I'm Bryan. Nice to see you again, by the way, Peter.
Nice.
All this time, but yeah, I'm Bryan Talbot. I've been writing and drawing comics and graphic novels for over 40 years now. Starting in underground comics back in the 70s, comics of the counterculture of the time. But I've worked on all sorts of comics, from superhero comics, science fiction, biography. I've even done a couple of children's comics, everything in between, really.
I mean, you've an entire broad spectrum of work. You're not doing like pigeonholed into one genre, and also your artwork has kind of changed with each one. It's evolved over time. And I mean, what I've also find interesting as well is that you're not just a writer or an comic artist. You do both, which is, which I found kind of very rare in the medium, isn't it?
Well, there are quite a few. There's people like, Jeff Smith and Frank Miller, and there's probably Darryl Cunningham. There's quite a few. Posey Simmons over here. But yeah, they're not as common as somebody specialising in one aspect.
Yeah. Why did you want to kind of like maintain, like be the writer and the artist as well? Did you for the full creative control, or was it?
Well, yeah. I mean, especially for most of the last 20 years, and I've also retained the rights.
Yeah.
So that's why I stopped working on things like Batman or Dread or whatever, because they're other people's characters. You don't own them. But if it's your own work, you own everything. And you get, if it does sell well, you can never tell whether it is going to sell well or not. You get more of the royalties. But I like control the complete train set. Basically.
Yeah, well, like it's your world, and you can therefore do what you want with it, and so you're not beholden to anyone or anything really. When yeah, I mean, you were there at ground zero with comics emerged from the underground all the way to mainstream now, to the point where you see comic books in Waterstones.
Yeah, they were there 20 years ago.
Exactly. I mean, what's it been like for you, like to go from like as you say, like the underground comics movement to being a Costa winner?
Well, I mean, it's taken a while,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you remember the big original the graphic novel boom in the 80s, and Watchmen came out, and Dark Knight and Mouse, and it was suddenly comics were cool, and there were magazines and grown-up newspapers actually with headlines like "Splat Pow, comics aren't for kids anymore," and suddenly they were very trendy. And but the thing is, it bubble burst very quickly, because at that time there just wasn't enough quality material to sustain this sort of interest, and there was a big interest in it at the time. I remember getting on a train in London to go back to Preston, where I was living then, and this sort of basically what was a yuppie got in the carriage and sat opposite me and opened his briefcase out and took a copy of Love and Rockets. I said, read it openly on the train. I thought, wow, it's really catching on. But yeah, there were very few graphic novels around at the time, really. I mean, this was a time you could do 2 or 3 published every year, and you could actually read them all,
Yeah.
But once you read about a dozen of the best ones, there wasn't very much good stuff around. And, Marvel and DC and other publishers who were publishing, superhero comics, which at the time were incredibly bland and, not like they are now. They sort of went, oh, graphic novels are selling. So they collect half a dozen copies of Spider-Man and slap them together and call it a graphic novel. Well, people who bought Watchmen and gone, wow, these graphic novels are great. They'd pick up, oh, there's a graphic novel. And they go, what's this crap, And it'd confirm all the worst prejudices, really, about comics. But since then, the graphic novels, they've been coming out more and more frequently, exponentially, actually. I mean, more and more, you can't read them all now. There's dozens and dozens published every year, hundreds probably. So now, by the turn of the century, we had become established, such a range of quality material in whatever style, whatever genre, there was enough to maintain this, the second boom, which is still going on. It's, this is the golden age of graphic novels. It's been going on now for a good 15 years, it's, and yeah, nowadays, I mean, we get invited more to literary festivals than we do to comic do's these days. Most literary festivals, decent ones, have a graphic novel component now. They've been interviewed by Radio 4, reviewed in tabloid, not tabloid, broadsheet newspapers, respectable newspapers, and magazines. It's changed a lot. And this winning, Mary's first book, winning the Costa, that was an example of that.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, you collaborated with Mary as well on like several books as well, where, as I understand it, you were the artist and Mary was the writer, or was it more collaborative than that?
Well, there was some give and take. I contributed bits of scripts, but mainly Mary wrote the script, and then we, as I'm drawing it, we'd be discussing it, and I'd say, I think this panel needs to be split over two, or whatever. I think this balloon needs making, the text needs making it clearer. That's my big thing, trying to make things explicit without them seeming too explicit, But so I've been putting it, and she, when I'm drawing it, she'll say, "Oh, how about such thing here," or whatever. So there's give and take.
Yeah.
I'm currently now. I'm working on. I'm more than halfway through a fifth book, which is.
Can you say anything about it?
Yeah. It's a biography of Leonora Carrington.
Okay.
She was the last of the original surrealists. She only died a few years ago. She only died about 2014, 2012 or something.
Wow. Okay.
She was quite young, but she was there in the 30s in Paris with Picasso and Dali, and I mean, she was Max Ernst lover for a few years. She knew all these people. So yeah, and she's a fascinating person. She was completely wacky. I mean, and at one point, the point I'm actually up to now, I'm drawing, she had this complete psychotic episode in the early 1940s, which is a Spanish mental hospital for quite a while. And the book is called Armed with Madness, which is a quote, Leonora Carrington.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a surreal biography. I'm drawing it in a surreal style.
Oh, no, that's going to be fantastic. Yeah, we kind of embrace the surrealism and kind of interweave that with the character as well. That sounds perfect.
Yeah, it's supposed to be coming out next May next year from Self-Made Hero. So.
Just in time for my birthday. I'll tell my wife earlier. Has collaborating with Mary been any different to previous collaborations? Like you worked with Neil Gaiman in the past and others, the way, as I understand it, where an artist is given the script and then draws it, has given, obviously you're married to Mary, has that kind of changed the collaborative nature of creation?
Yeah, it's a lot closer than most collaborations. I mean, in a lot of comics, the collaboration ends with the artist writing, the writer finishing the script and giving it to the artist, or the editor giving it to the artist, and that they don't even talk sometimes, especially in American mainstream superhero comics. But yeah, so it's very close. Like I say, while every book she's done while she's been developing the plot, we'll be chatting about it at night during dinner, and sitting in the living room after dinner. So we'll be, I'll suggest things as they're going along. So yeah. But I mean, having said that, when I worked with Pat Mills and Neil Gaiman before, we used to talk practically every day on the phone. While I was, sometimes I was actually drawing at the drawing board. I'm inking it and talking to them at the same time.
Yeah.
But it is an unusual collaboration, usually close collaboration.
It's the fact that you're married to Mary. It's like, what happens when you kind of say, well, I think this should be here, and Mary's going, well, no, that should be there. Do you have that kind of?
No, we never do really.
Right.
She just trusts me what I'm doing, and she's, got into it really quickly. I mean, the first, I mean, you know, she was academic for
Of course.
many years, and she took early retirement because she got sick of the constant cost cutting and being made to do more work for the same money and everything. It got a bit too much. And she got out, and one night we were just sitting around, and I said, we were watching a movie or something. And I said, oh, why don't you write a graphic novel and I'll draw it? She went, what? I said, yeah, think about it. And she did, and it won a Costa Award. It was the first British graphic novel to win a major literary award. And her first script was a bit like a script of a play. It wasn't broken down to pages and panels. Yeah. It was like characters and descriptions of scenes. But by the second one, the script for Sally, I mean, she was there. She was like, you know, page 1, panel 1. You know, she was doing it on a 9-panel grid, and you know, panel description, text. You know, it was a proper comic script. So she picked it up very quickly. I mean, she's spent years seeing me do it, you know, but she was always the first person I'd show a script to, a written script, before I showed it to an editor or anything, you know.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like Daughter of Her Father's Eyes is part like biography of Joyce.
Well, Lucia Joyce, really.
Lucia Joyce, and also her blends in her own backstory as well, which I found great. And it's like you think you're in it as well. Like, obviously,
it's Mary's biography.
Yeah.
What she's doing, I mean, she's basically continuing all the work, her academic work, which is all about gender and power and language, and she's basically tackling the same subjects in her books. So what she's doing she was contrasting two girls growing up basically at different parts of the 20th century and different expectations of what, you know, a woman can do and what a woman is expected to do.
Yeah, and it's contrasted brilliantly. It really kind of, and your artwork just embeds the reader in it and really kind of gets them involved in it. I mean, your work as in the whole is incredibly political throughout your story. I mean, you can read them, like, for example, Granville is just, you could read that as a rip-roaring adventure tale. But the subtext and, like, the politics of it come across so much more when you kind of just pause and just consider it a second.
Yeah, it's about the class system, it's about racism, it's about a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, like, you've got, like, the reference of the dough faces as well, like, you know, and like being second-class citizens. Yeah, and
protest movements and the rise of the right wing.
Yeah, I mean, and you don't hold back. You don't. I mean, the subtext is always there, but you don't hold back in your politics, which I think is refreshing in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to preach in the stories.
Exactly.
But, my primary aim is to just tell a good story. You know, to tell a story that is involving, but it's also thought-provoking and intelligent.
Yeah,
they're aimed at adults, you know, because they're aimed at adults.
Of course, yeah. I mean, one of your most complex stories, well, when I first read them, especially, was The Adventures of Luther Arkwright, and that is about, you know, you could, on one level, that is a cross-dimensional adventure hopping tale of good versus evil, and then you read it a bit more. And you pause and consider, like, no, this is a lot more. This is about control, about authority, the right of authority, about, you know, who has the right and
dictatorships and
exactly,
and rebellion, and you know, I sort of switch. That's what you can do with parallel worlds. You can sort of switch things around. So if you notice in the story that the Union Jack, it's actually the flag of the terrorists in the story. But you'll notice that at the end of the story, when they get into power, they're no better than the Puritans.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it was Hiram Kowalski writes in his final news piece. He kind of like, he ponders where will this go, and he kind of like, there's a kind of subtle underhint of a warning of this. It's not going to change. It's going to continue being the same. And again, you dress that wonderfully in Heart of Empire.
Come back 23 years later, yeah.
You come back to 20 years later, and, you know, Queen Anne is essentially the head of this massive global empire and subjugating, countries
World.
around subjugating the entire world, which is no different to what the Puritans were doing. But again, it was just a fantastic twitch when you think about it.
The Puritans were a lot more. There was like isolationists. They were just like little country, on their own. But yeah, and to keep further, she's bleeding the whole world dry of its resources.
And again, you contrasted that with the story of Henry and how he was kind of leeching the psychic energies, and again, there's that whole contrast there.
He's like the eponymous heart of the empire, leeching everything to himself.
Yeah, and again, from the very start as well, he had this countdown throughout. At first, it was days. So was it a week? Weeks. Then it was days.
Yeah, it was days.
Then the days, then hours, and then I think the last issue too is like done over minutes.
Yeah.
Where they counted down. I mean, how did you plan all that out? I mean, that requires some, incredible planning.
I always spend a lot of time on the structure. It's very important.
Yeah, I mean, how do you prepare for a story? I mean, like, does the idea of it come first, or how far in advance do you plot things out?
It depends. Depends on the sort of story. Heart of Empire, I think I was thinking about it for most of the 10 or 12 years since I finished the last Arkwright.
Oh, wow.
As I was doing other things, I also wrote Mad Rat, which I thought about thinking about for a few years before I did it, and the Batman story I wrote, and Alice, I was thinking about that for quite a few years and doing a lot of research, and but yeah, once you've got everything together, the ideas come in bits and pieces, and you start seeing a vague structure, very vague. But when I've got all the information in place and I know more or less what I want to do, then I start structuring the story. And sometimes that takes, Alice took 6 solid weeks just to structure. That's working every day for 7 days a week, all day. And what I usually do is I tape together sheets of A3 paper and completely construct the plot on a scene after scene. So I can see, the good thing is you can see it all at a glance. You can see it, and you can see this is happening here, this is happening here, You can plot sort of movements through it. And it'll go, I'll do that, and then I'll go, by the time I finish, it's full of arrows pointing and moving scenes around and notes. And that's all, I'll put that to one side and then do a second draft, then a third draft, and however many drafts it takes. And it's a great way of, you can see the whole story. You can foreshadow events. This is happening here, right? It needs foreshadowing here, I need to sort of drop hints about this, because, I don't want things to seem to just happen out of the blue. They have to happen in a logical sequence, and there has to be a reason for it. And even little things like, in this scene, pretty silly example, but somebody opens this door and gets this gun out, and nobody knew it was there. Well, you can go, right, okay, well, in this scene, we're in this room, I can show the drawer with the gun in it, or whatever, to make a note. And but yeah, Alice was especially difficult to structure because it was told as if it was stream of consciousness. It uses dream logic in the storytelling. So it seems like it's made up as I'm going along. It's not. It's got a rock solid structure underneath it with every little bit of information, exact place it's needed to be able to follow the next bit. Throughout the story, seeded throughout the story. That was incredibly hard to structure.
Yeah, actually, one of my notes says in front of me, just below the screen, is actually stream of consciousness for Alice, because it just feels like a dream sequence, and you end that as if, I've just had a dream. But yeah, that.
Well, I got it from Lewis Carroll. Lewis Carroll used dream logic in Alice, and I did my first brainstorm comics, the underground ones. They were psychedelic trips, they were. And they use dream logic, one scene and morph into another one, character and morph into something else, it's. Yeah,
I mean, like you early come to like Chester P. Hackenbash and Frank Frazicki at Space Ace, weren't they?
Yeah.
And but yeah, I mean, Alice was incredibly detailed. I mean, like I come from the area, I come from the northeast, and I recognize a lot of those places where you joined. I've been there, I've seen that, and
yeah, well, you come from near Stockton,
exactly.
So that which is where Carol lived for years,
Yeah. And yeah, just you absolutely nail that area. Like the depth of your research comes across incredibly well. And one thing I found is when you're reading it, where before with like the previous graphic novels, there's kind of a pacing element where it's kind of just pauses. This is just continuous, and it sort of interweaves like from one stage to the next.
Yeah, you sort of. One of the threads is the story of Lewis Carroll, the life of Lewis Carroll. So I tell that in bits as they're prompted in the story, throughout the book. Yeah.
And the fun as well is like also it's just as much a study in Carroll, it's a study on the nature of storytelling and myth and legend and history.
You're back.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
The screen froze for a while.
Okay. Yeah. So as I was saying, like in Alice, it's an interweaving of the history of Lewis Carroll as well as the nature of storytelling and history and how the two are interlinked.
Yep.
I mean, I found that incredibly insightful.
Right, thank you. You notice how each different story I tell, even though they're all tied together, sort of thing. I use a different style to tell each story. It's a style I thought would be suitable for that sort of story. So the ghost story of the Cold Lad of Hilton, that's told in like an EC horror comic style, for example. Yeah, but to talk about structure again, the amount of time I spend. It's a camp of years,
Yeah.
So I have a folder over there with notes for story I've been thinking about for 25 years, and I still don't think it's quite right. The fantasy story, but so it can take a long time. But with Granville, the first Granville book, that was the complete opposite.
Okay.
It just sort of came like that, basically. It sort of came fully formed. It was really strange. I'd finished Alice, and I was packing away some reference books I'd used, including a book on Jean-Ignace Isidore Gérard, who was a French illustrator, early 19th century, big influence on John Tenniel. And he went under the pen name J.J. Granville. And he did caricatures, early 19th century, he did caricatures of people as animals. And there was a satirical, criticizing social mores and types of people and things like that. If you do a search for J.J. Granville, you'll see lots of his images online. And I suddenly thought, well, Granville, that could be the nickname for Paris in a alternative reality, which is a world populated by animals, where it's the biggest capital of the world. And that was the idea. And I thought, for years I wanted to do a detective story. I thought, I'll do a detective story set in this world. And it was in the back of my mind over a week while I was working on other things. I don't know, I can't remember what I was drawing at the time. It must have been Metronome or something. But it was just in the back of my mind for about a week. At the end of a week, I sat down, I got a piece of paper, and I wrote the plot out like that, scene 1, 2, 3, and then picked up the keyboard and started typing it, page 1, panel 1. And for the first time, I didn't use before everything I'd done, Bad Rat, the Batman story, Heart of Empire, other things. I'd done each page first in rough form, in thumbnails, with dirt the script at the same time in the margins. And for the first time, I just did all that in my head. I was going straight from the plot to the script, and it just wrote itself. I wrote it in about 5 days. It was like taking dictation. I mean, the characters seemed to speak their own lines, It was incredible. The other ones have been quite a lot harder, but that first one.
I was going to ask, did you already have that kind of 5-book arc planned out?
No.
Okay.
No, just that first story. And it was only as I was finishing the story, And it was quite short for me as a graphic novel. It was only 96 pages, and usually a lot longer. And by the time I finished it, I thought, well, I've had so much fun doing this. I want to do some more. And I already had an idea or two for stories. So I started working on the second one. And as I was finishing the second one, I imagined the other three, the three that followed. So, yeah. I mean, if you look, there's characters who appear in the first volume, then come back in the fifth one or whatever, or first mentioned in the second one, and you only see them 2 books later. You know, it's there's things planted in there.
Yeah, you do kind of, you're like an incredible knack for referencing and foreshadowing in your stories, and you kind of and it kind of very much rewards the reader that pays attention.
Mm.
And I mean, I've recently reread the Granville stories, and they're just an absolute blast. They're just such a fun adventure romp, but again with that kind of political subtext simmering away there in the background. And it feels like almost Rupert the Bear, as if it's by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah, that was a couple of the original influences. Yeah,
and again, it just comes across that you kind of got the detective elements of Doyle with the horrendous graphic violence of Tarantino.
Yep.
And I mean, I absolutely relished it because it was just a delightful contrast.
Yeah, the first one is the most Tarantino sort of influenced, and the second one was more Hitchcock. You know, I have these sort of Hitchcock set pieces with the suspense, you know, the box being strangled as cogs going behind his head is being pushed towards them, and the finale on top of the Hitchcock type finale on top of Westminster Cathedral.
Of course, yes.
But then the third one, it's like a James Bond sort of influence on that. So they're all sort of slightly different slants.
Yeah, they have like tonal differences between each one, I found.
Yeah.
And that kind of kept it fresh when you get to book 5. I mean, some books, you start feeling, right, I'm into book 5 of this now. Okay, it's a bit, I know what's coming, I know what to expect. With Granville, you don't have that because it is a slight, even though the characters are the same, the world's the same, if somewhat, you know, continued on from the previous story, there's still that tonal shift, so you never know quite what's going to happen. And I think the 5th book is the only time I've ever seen a spoiler protector.
Well, I think I invented that because I've not heard of them anywhere else, but that was only in the British edition. The American edition decided not to have it. They said, "Oh, people will take it off in the store so they can look at the last pages, and the retailer won't be able to sell it then." And never happened over here. So
no, I got mine with the spoiler protector warning sealed.
Well, sealed.
Birthday present. Yeah, and it delivered. It absolutely delivered, and it stopped me kind of, well, what's going to happen here? I had no, it's sealed. I'm going to respect that of Bryan.
Right.
And obviously it's there for a reason. So when you get to those final few pages, you've almost got that second feeling of opening a book for the first time because you kind of unwrapping it.
Explains what's going on. That's the only book I think I do that in, isn't it? Have a big sort of Poirot type reveal at the end, you know.
Yeah, again, as you say, it kind of echoes that Poirot reveal of this is the final revelation, and it's kind of kept, you know, it's kept doubly closed because it's in the book and then sealed.
Yeah, and I mean, for the first time in the books, you see Rock's backstory.
Yes,
time as well. You see his mentor and how he's Stamford Hawksmoor and how he's trained up, and. I've finished. I think I've got a publisher for it now, but I've written a script which is a prequel to Granville, which is called The Casebook of Stamford Hawksmoor, and it's set 23 years before the first story, at the time of the French end of the French occupation.
Oh,
and it's all in London.
That's nice.
It's also in London and south of England.
Yeah. And again, that I find you using the number 23 years very interesting because you mentioned a few times like the number 23 crops up a lot in your work, doesn't it?
Yes, I got that from Illuminatus, from the Illuminatus books, and Robert Anton Wilson, the 23 Enigma.
Yeah, exactly.
There was even a film, wasn't there? There was a film about 23.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's
Jim
called.
Carrey or something.
Yeah. But yeah, again, like and one thing I want to discuss as well is you look at Heart of Empire, that's very different in style to the previous The Adventures of Luther Arkwright. I mean, completely made like The Adventures of Luther Arkwright was in gorgeous crosshatch pen and ink, and Heart of Empire was like full color and
clear line, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, I think you used like computers for the first time as well, didn't you, with Heart of Empire?
No, it was lettered. It was hand lettered by Ella DeVille, but colouring was done by Angus Mackay.
Okay.
On computer.
I've
been very impressed by his colouring on Martha Washington, and I've known Angus for years. And so when I did the Technophage comics, and they were saying, "Oh, we need a colorist," I recommended Angus for that. And Heart of Empire came after that. So yeah, I provided him with full color guides for each page.
Oh wow!
Either with felt tip pens or sometimes photographs, and saying, "Can you make it these colors?" or whatever. Actually, some are on display right now. I have this exhibition at the Cartoon Museum in London.
Yeah,
that's there it's running for 4 months. So one of the things it has about 3 of these different color roughs.
Okay. I mean, how obviously, like, we've got computers now, the ubiquitous everywhere. Has the presence of computers influenced how comics are created? I mean, obviously you still hand draw, do the first hand draw by hand, but do you kind of scan them in and then touch them up on screen?
Scan them on, clean them up. I mean, you in the past before that, you'd do the inks and then you'd use processed white gouache to go around cleaning up little, splodges or little mistakes, whatever. That's quicker to do on computer now. And with Granville, of course, they're all coloured. I coloured them all on computer.
Yeah.
And lettered them on computer. Yeah, since Alice, I've done my own lettering. Because Comicraft, the company, in exchange for an illustration I gave them, they made I sent them my hand lettering, and they made a font out of it.
Oh wow!
So I've been using that ever since.
Okay, so you got your own. What's it called? Is it?
It's just Bryan Talbot font. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I mean,
it's available through Comicraft. Yeah.
I'm going to go there. But yeah, I mean, has you doing things on computer now increased the productivity of the speed of your comic creation process? No.
No, it takes longer actually.
Really?
Well, you know what it's like on computer. You can go at it forever. You can keep changing things forever.
Yeah.
Improving things, and it's I keep seeing things and changing them and everything, which I probably wouldn't have done before. And after I reach a point, which I call the bugger it point, after you've spent that long working on a page, I go, bugger it, that's it. It goes. But yeah, you're talking about the cross-hatching in Arkwright. Well, the new one, I decided I wanted to go back to that original Arkwright feel. So it is a bit experimental. Not as experimental as the first one. Plot's more or less linear. But I've gone back to that cross-hatching style, and it is very time-consuming. Took a long time.
Yeah, because you have to kind of do each one by hand, don't you?
Yeah.
And just which takes time. I mean, I suppose like in some ways, kind of computers will kind of enable the perfectionist side of you, because you can just scroll in and just zoom in as far as you want, and just.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the pages I think one of the pages in the first Luther Arkwright took 56 hours altogether. Solid work. I mean, that's the signing of the treaty page. The one with Kowalski, which I call it "I'm the Light of the World" page. That full length one. Yeah, that took I think 3 solid days work, 4 days work. I mean, something like a day to pencil it, and about 2 or 3 days to ink, because this cross hatching, it's like knitting.
Yeah.
You do it for about 2 hours and covered about that much. You just have to keep building up these lines, overlaying them, and then building up texture and shade. And at the time I was doing first Arkwright, I was thinking, I must be bloody crazy. because at the time I was getting it for a little independent comic on Near Myths. I was being paid, I think, £10 a page for it. When you sit there, 4 days for £10, I was thinking I must be absolutely mad. But having said that, it's been in continual print for the last since the 70s, since the late 70s. It's never gone out of print, and it's had lots of foreign editions. I've sold the film option several times. Films have actually come of it. It's actually under option now for a TV series. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. There's been an audio drama made of it.
With David Tennant as Luther Arkwright.
Yeah. In fact, the Heart of Empire audio drama comes out this year.
Okay.
With Tennant reprising his role as Luther Arkwright.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. Well, that's neat.
Yeah, I met him 3 years ago. Neil introduced me to.
Oh, brilliant!
The thing he was doing, he was a lovely guy. I could say, you played one of my characters. Yeah, what? Oh, yeah, I'll do that again. Well, I said, what they want to do, Part of Empire. He went, all right, okay. So,
that's nice. So you actually have met the voice of Luther Arkwright in many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the attention to detail in Luther Arkwright comics, I think it really comes across in the signing of the treaty. When I think in the back of the issue, you actually name every person involved in that treaty.
A key illustration key, isn't there? Where all the figures are numbered, who they are.
Which again is like, it didn't need to be there.
No.
But it just sells you, it just reinforces the detail, and also it kind of just tells the reader that you need to pay attention. You really need to pay attention, because there is information here that you can easily miss if you do not properly read it, or if you skim through it, you're going to miss loads.
Yeah, well, I think I tried to do it so people, you didn't need to know who all these people were really, but you could follow the story without it. It's nice to have little details like that.
I mean, also you had like the tarot reading by Octaviana of Luther, and again, that you kind of look back to it, and like, if you know anything about tarot, you can actually read what's going to happen in the future. Yeah,
well, yeah, Mary used to read tarot, so I mean, she did the tarot cards, and I drew them into the story. I said I want a reading for Arkwright, and she knew all about the story and what was supposed to be going on and things like that. She did a suitable tarot display.
Oh, nice. Yeah. One thing I noticed as well is Heart of Empire kind of takes all the loose ends, or continues the story of the adventures of Luther Arkwright, addresses them, and resolves many of it, like addresses his children, without going into spoilers or anything, addresses his children, the nature of the world, and continues Wotan more. But it feels like that's the kind of ending of Luther Arkwright's story in many ways, because he's happy, he's done his penance on that world, and he's kind of happy in and of himself, and he's going off to adventure now. And but now we've got with Fairfax, but and I love the healing at Fairfax. That was just a joy to read,
right?
Because it was so in character, yet so brilliantly done.
So that's mentioned in the new one, which is set 53 years later.
Yeah, and I mean, like, so where does the Legend of Luther Arkwright come to now? Because I mean, it feels like an entirely new story from what I'm gathering. Obviously it is, but
it is, yeah.
Yeah.
So what can I tell you? I mean, it starts like he's still traveling the parallels with Fairfax, who's now about 128. A result of that healing thing, because
of course,
he put so much psychic energy into him. It was sort of literally reborn in each cell. He was, and there's 00s in it. There's quite a few parallels in it. Quite a few different more parallels than in the scene in the other ones.
Okay,
in one book. So a lot of it's sort of a chase across different parallel worlds, and which are quite different. There's some utopias, some dystopias. I mean, basically, there's Outright's the next stage in human evolution and everything. well, there emerges a more developed stage.
Ah,
is a lot more alien than, and despises humanity for what they're doing to the planet. He's very fond of nature and and the world and everything. And he's basically on a crusade to destroy humanity. This creature. Well, it's, I say he is hermaphrodite.
all right.
But he's got incredible psychic power. I mean, hugely more powerful than Arkwright.
Okay.
So there's actually an Arkwright, so the only thing standing between him and the Greek defeat, death, and of humanity. And so he's pursuing Arkwright across these parallels. And,
it's interesting what you say about, there's going to be more parallels here, because the Legend of Luther Arkwright was spread over about 3. You had Luther's Home Parallel, 00, and 03856.
And there's one that's like ours, like our world, the one where he escapes to.
Yeah. And then I think in Heart of Empire, it's very much focused on 03856 and 00, with some others.
Yeah.
Without going into too much detail. But yeah, so why did you decide to kind of spread out more? Did you want to kind of embrace the kind of the multi-parallel worlds idea?
Yeah. Yes, bring more into it rather than being stuck on one. But a lot of it, I mean, a lot of this story, especially most of the first half of the story, is set on one parallel in particular.
Yeah.
Is a parallel. I'd already drawn most of this before COVID started. It's set on a world where there's been a plague.
Oh, wow.
In 1943, a terrible plague wiped out most of humanity. I mean, more than even 1 in 10, decimated. But I mean, a lot. In the whole of British Isles, only about 2,000 people left, 3,000 people. And the idea is, what would that be like 100 years later?
Ah, see.
So it's gone back to the Dark Ages. All the roads are overgrown. There's trees coming up through roads. Houses are falling down. Nobody can read or write, apart from the monks.
Yeah.
There's Britain is a series of small tribes. Well, not small tribes, but there's 9 countries. And Britain comprises of 9 countries. That are, a lot of them at constant war with each other to try and gain take over the territory. Because a lot of it's about nationalism, this story. So it's like going back to the Dark Ages. That's the idea. I wanted to imagine what Britain would be like if something like that stopped everything. It's on start again.
Yeah, again, you kind of you harken back to nationalism, and rampant nationalism, and we're seeing that now globally.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's one of the reasons I thought it was a good time to do another one.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
Yeah, absolutely. We need the kind of those warnings out there, it's strong populist leaders, and I mean, again, there's that line at the end of Heart of Empire, which I just love, which is show me a nation that needs a stronger leader, and I will show you a nation of sheep.
Yep.
And I thought, yes, I could not sum that up any better. That was some brilliant writing there.
Yeah, I think it's an old anarchist slogan, I think. Yeah.
Ah, okay. I didn't know that. Yeah, I completely support it. I think that's just such a succinct summation.
We don't need people telling us what to do. We need people working on our behalf for a betterment,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, a public service, not a public leader.
That's right.
Yeah, and without going too political. I mean, steampunk's also been a constant element in your works. I mean, with Arkwright's recurring steampunk elements, Granville, and so on. What brought you to steampunk in the first place?
I think it was growing up in the 60s, actually.
Yeah.
Because when I was about 16, right in the middle of the swinging 60s and everything, suddenly in 16, Victoriana became incredibly trendy. It was fashion. It's a big fashion thing. Jimi Hendrix and Mick Jagger were wearing hussar jackets on stage and performing. Well, Beatles on Sergeant Pepper's. That's they were wearing this mock Edwardian military uniform. And there were suddenly lots of films, very good films about, set in Victorian times, like the Charge of the Light Brigade and The Wrong Box and things like this. And there's a new series of Sherlock Holmes on TV with Douglas Wilmer as Sherlock Holmes, and series like Adam Adamant. You probably don't remember.
I do remember Adam Adamant.
I actually managed to get them on recently, get a set.
Oh, wow.
They really dated badly. But at the time, I thought it was brilliant. It was a Victorian adventurer who was frozen in time, who was suddenly awake in his 60s. And so all this stuff going on. So it was very, very, very popular. And, I read Mike Moorcock's books, which
Jerry Cornelius.
Which are proto-steampunk, a lot of them. I mean, there's always been steampunk stories around, there's before that, in pulp stories, about... Yeah. H. Beam Piper and people like this. But I think it was Moorcock who really, started off that trend, and which I used in Arkwright. And then when the first time I met Pat Mills, he said, I really love Arkwright, and I want to do one of these retro science fiction stories, which became the Nemesis story, the Gothic Empire.
Oh, yes.
Which is why he asked me to draw it after Kev went to, when he didn't go there, but he said he would for America. And both of those, Arkwright and Nemesis, was steampunk way before the coining of the term steampunk.
Exactly. Also, I think I said that you are the author of the Britain's first graphic novel.
Well, it's a good strong contender. It's, the first graphic novel is usually considered to be Contract with God by Will Eisner.
Oh, yes.
Because it was the first comic in book form that was marketed as a graphic novel.
Right.
So that's when it starts. Now, in America, there've been several attempts. Richard Corbin had a Bloodstone out in 1973, things like this. I think even EC tried to do a couple of adult comics in book form. But the idea of comics, a whole novel being done in comics, was incredible to me. And Arkwright started to be serialized in Near Myths in October, I think it was 1978, which is the same month that Contract with God was published, coincidentally. And the first collected edition, so the first graphic novel of Arkwright, came out in 1982, along with When the Wind Blows by Raymond Briggs.
Yes.
And Posey Simmons' True Love, both which are graphic novels. But as I seen, mine have been serialized 4 years before I got the edge.
Yeah. Okay. And again, since then, since I suppose, about 15 years ago, your work has always been released as a graphic novel rather than as a single issue comic.
No, they released Bad Rat in 4 parts.
So yes, you're right. Yeah.
It was structured as a graphic novel. It was structured. Well, so was Arkwright, the first Arkwright. It was structured as a novel.
Yeah.
Even though it was serialized, which is why all the different parts when they're serialized are all different lengths. Because they're all just different scenes in this graphic novel.
Yeah. Do you write with kind of graphic novels in mind, or do you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the fact that single issues are, the release of single issues is almost consequential for you.
Well, I've not done it for so long that although the publisher of I won't say who it is, it's not been finalized yet. In fact, I've got a Zoom meeting with them. They'd like to do this Hawksmoor book as a series of comics first and then collect it. So I'm not averse to it, no. But yeah, no, I came across the idea of comics in book form in the early 70s, well, late 60s actually.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great notion, a great concept. And I used to do, in the early 80s, I did talk several times, quite a few times at some universities and libraries and things about history of comics talk. Because I was evangelical about trying to improve comic consciousness in the country,
Yeah.
And it used to finish with, and the future is the graphic novel, and I was right, more or less. As sales of individual issues have gone down, sales of graphic novels are quite big overall.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at like somewhere like Page 45 in Nottingham,
Yeah.
no, they sell graphic novels. They are a comic shop that sell graphic novels.
They just sell graphic novels,
yeah. I think they do have at the way back in the dark corners. They have like the superhero single issues.
That's what's a clever thing about it. You see, they don't have to advertise about the people who buy them. They'll go in there anyway to buy them. It's to the general public they're selling. They're selling books to the general public, which is a great idea.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this is not like tucked away in a dark alleyway, as there have been before. Like, these are it's Nottingham Centre.
Yeah, it's high street shop. Yeah,
exactly, and it's doing really well.
Yeah, it's 25 years now, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
I've done quite a few signings though, yeah.
Speaking of signings, do you have any signings lined up for the Legend of Luther Arkwright?
Yes, I'm doing one at Gosh Comics on Saturday, 16th of July.
Okay. Any others lined up, or?
Well, I'll be doing, for the first time, I've actually got a table. We're having a table at the Lakes Festival.
Okay.
Rather than just being there for the weekend and being a patron, whatever. So because me and Mary were two of the founder patrons of the festival, we've actually for the first time got a table there. I thought we'd have a change, have a base, Your
base of operations, as it were.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Would it be too?
Oh yes, the week after the Gosh one, I've got one at Forbidden Planet Newcastle.
Okay. So you're not got any others lined up around the country?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay.
Actually, what today is it? It's Tuesday, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I'm doing a signing tomorrow night, actually. Mary's now the visiting professor of graphic narrative at Lancaster University.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, since last October. Took over from Benoit Peters. And one of the things to do with the university and to do with Lancaster is she's giving a talk tomorrow night at this thing's called the Priory in the middle of Lancaster, and we're going to do a signing afterwards. So I'm actually signing tomorrow night in Lancaster.
Okay. One thing I want to ask is, did we finally coming out of COVID-19 and its lockdowns, fingers crossed, touch wood, how did the lockdowns affect you and your writing? Did that have any impact upon you? Or
None.
No?
Well, I just worked more because, it didn't make any difference to me because I work from home 7 days a week anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I do. So I just did what I usually do. I go for a 4-mile walk in the middle of the day, brisk 4-mile walk. But apart from that, I'm in this room working, either at the computer or up at the drawing board over there.
Okay. Sorry, you were going to say?
Yeah, usually though, before the lockdown and everything, we were once a month or two, we'd be in London or at a literary festival or in Paris. We had to go to Paris for a weekend, or something like that. I couldn't do that, of course.
Yeah.
So it forced me, I was there a lot, and it still took me about 2 years because it's this bloody cross-hatching style. And as soon as I started doing it again, I realized why I'd stopped doing it. It just takes so long. It's horrendous.
Yeah, but coming from someone who really appreciates that style, I just absolutely adore it. And yeah, and the fact it's taken you so long and so intensive, it's kind of makes me appreciate it even more.
Yeah, 230 pages, this new book. So it did take a long time.
And is the Legend of Luther Arkwright, that's going to be a graphic novel? There's no single issues?
No.
Okay. So where do you go from here? Got the Legend of Luther Arkwright. Have you got any more books planned for the future? Well,
like I said, I'm drawing Mary's 5th one now. And after that, I want to do this Hawksmoor book, Stamford Hawksmoor, which is 170 pages. And it's very different. It'll be very different from Granville, actually.
Okay.
It'll have some of the same characters in. Like I think Quimby Quayle's in it, and Mastock, the murderer. there's a few characters in it. It was still around at the time of Granville, but it's a different sort of story. It's a lot darker and it's a lot more detective-y, and it's also going to be in sepia. It's going to be watercolor painted, not not colored on computer. So it's going to be very atmospheric, I think. Lots of London smogs and things like this.
Yeah.
And also, in the Granville books, there's no text.
No, you're right.
Apart from the one that starts each book with a little brief description of the background.
Yeah.
It's all spoken word. And I've sort of done that since Bad Rat, really, purely spoken word. Although this Arkwright one, there's quite a few bits of text, but the Hawksmoor one, it's text heavy. It's called the Casebook of Stamford Hawksmoor. A lot of the dialogue, it's taken from his writings.
Right.
So there's a lot of captions, a lot of writing. And I'm very pleased with the quality of the writing. I think it's probably the best thing I've ever written. I mean,
okay, I'm looking forward to that.
Language-wise, because it's written in this Victorian style,
Okay, brilliant. And we've got the Legend of Luther Arkwright that's been released next month.
Yep,
14th of July. Please, everyone, check it out. Well, I've not seen it, but it's going to be fantastic. If you go to
my website, there's a few examples of some of the panels. There's a few examples.
Okay, and do you have any links to share before we finish off?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, okay.
There is this year, actually. Come to think of it, there's a biography of me coming out.
Oh.
Which is, in fact, there's two Kickstarter projects. That's one of them. I was contacted a year and a half ago by this academic who lives in Beirut, of all places. Who's a big fan, and he said, I'd like to do a biography. So I said, okay. So he started writing it. And then he said, well, what about this? What about that? What did you do here? And I thought, it'd be easier if I just co-write it.
Yeah. So
we've sort of co-written it because there's all this sort of private stuff that you couldn't possibly know what was going on in my private life. So it's fully illustrated throughout. So there's lots of examples of artwork, photographs, all sorts of things. It's quite substantial. It's going to be a Kickstarter thing that's coming out. It's who are doing it? Can't remember. The Zoopel, is it? Publisher. Anyway,
yeah.
That's supposed to be coming out this year. Also, the NAS is going to be a Kickstarter project to republish the NAS in one book.
Excellent.
Which is good. From what's the name of his publisher? Drew Ford, his name is. He's done quite a few of these books. He specialises in getting books which he really likes that have been out of print, comics.
Yeah.
And publishing them.
Oh, nice.
So anyway, that'll be advertised on my site. That's coming out. And also Matt Greene, he's a doctor at Nottingham University.
Yeah.
He's actually bringing out an academic book on my work.
Oh, wow.
Specifically looking at the political side of it, analysing the political side of it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh,
this guy wrote the book on Alan Moore.
Right, yeah. Oh, so yeah, fantastic. And everyone, please check them out because they would be absolutely fascinating. If you've got any interest in Bryan Talbot or graphic novels, these are the places to look. Bryan, it has been an absolute pleasure speaking to me today. I apologize for the late start, but Amazon drivers will interrupt you no matter what. So everyone, will say thank you very much. I have been Peter Ray Allison, and joining me tonight has been Bryan Talbot. So thank you all very much for listening, and good night. Bye. Right. Okay. Thank you very much today, Bryan. It's been an absolute pleasure.
An invite to the launch party for the book.
Oh, where's the launch?
It's the London Cartoon Museum in London. It's on the 14th.
That is very tempting. I'm based in Derby, I'm not sure how possibly it will be able for me to get there, but I would see what we can do.
Okay. Oh, well, I'll send you the invite anyway, and
Thank you very
If
much.
you can't make it, it'd be great to see you.
It would be great to see you too, Bryan.
So we had the private view for the exhibition just 2 or 3 weeks ago, and that was a lot of people there. Lots of comic people, Ryan Hughes, all sorts of people. Steve Davis, the snooker player.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Lots of people. So I'm imagining this is going to be the same. This other one.
Yeah, I mean, I think is Adrian going to be there? We actually had Adrian Tchaikovsky.
Yeah.
I think he's done the introduction.
Yes,
and we had him on our podcast last night.
Last night, okay.
Yeah.
Adrian was there. He was there. In fact, we've got 2 exhibitions in London at the moment. There's also one, the graphic novels of Mary Talbot. If you go to my website, you'll see the thing. That's at a place called the Buckray Gallery, which is just artwork from her books. And this one at the Cartoon Museum. Adrian was at both of them. Came to both of the
brilliant.
Private
he's a lovely guy, Adrian. I mean, I met him several times at various conventions, and Bryan, it's been fantastic talking to you. I don't want to take any more time, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Right.